Hit the lotto. 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 Hit the lotto.
I'm up, jumbo bucks, big spender, hit the lotto. Why? $3,000 gonna buy back in, but you hope I win. Why? $3,000, so gotta hit the lotto, 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 mega flex, hit the lotto, who knows what's next? Hit the lotto, Slurpee, Coke Icy, hit the lotto, hit the lotto. Give me two number threes, 1619, cha-ching, cha-ching, hit the lotto, hit the lotto, hit the lotto, hit the lotto, hit the lotto.
What's happening, everybody? It's the Hit the Lotto podcast. Romo, I'm back again. Christmas break, New Year's break, happiness, time with family, all the joys of the end of year holidays, and then we get into the actual doldrums of winter and all the horrors of cold. But we are back again. It's been a few weeks. We took a few weeks off to, recharge, rest, do all those happy things that we like to do. And hope everybody out there's holidays were good for them. So we got two of our regulars back on tonight, and I can't be happier to bring them back on with me. But let's get us going here. Drico, are you out there tonight, Drico?
Hey, how are we doing? Thanks for having me on again.
What's up, man? How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing really good.
Yeah, you. How was your Christmas? Was good and everything went well?
I had a great Christmas, and as you know, I won a best ball tournament.
You did. We're gonna get into that. Let's just get all the little formalities out of the way. But
yeah, I flew home for Christmas.
You had good holidays. You were back in Ireland for a little while, and had the pleasure to see you. And it's always good to see you, especially when you live so far away. And got yourself back in time, and now you're back to work. But everything went well, huh?
Yeah. I basically dodged COVID like the Matrix.
Yeah, it's very true, isn't it? It's very true, isn't it?
But yeah, I hadn't seen my family in about 2.5 years. Hadn't seen you guys in about 2.5 years too. So it was really, really nice to be back. It was the Omni stuff with COVID and all that was kind of a bummer, but in other ways it was also kind of nice to spend to be able to spend as much time as we did with family after being away so long. So that was really nice.
Gotcha. So welcome back to the show. We're gonna dive into lots of football and sports. At least that's where I had it started to go this evening. But we also have with us in the studio the Rozz back in town, man. Who's got dealing with it right now. He's dealing with the Rona. How are you, man? Are you okay?
My man John,
What's
the king
up,
of the
man?
jungle.
Yeah, how's the
the
Rona,
lord of the
man?
litter box, the feline phenom, the big cat himself, live and alive right here from New York, New York. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. How was the? I know that you have slightly different associations, unfortunately, being in your field of work, especially with these holidays. So there must have been a lot of it going on. But hope you at least got to spend a little bit of time with the family, and like we said, you're dealing a bit with the Rona running through the family, like Hulk Hogan running wild, and so
Like shit through a goose.
Some time
That's
together
what it's
now.
like.
You get some time together now.
Well,
I hope it was
you.
good. I hope you had some time.
I get you caught up. Greetings, Colin. It's very nice to be on with you, and look forward to spending some more quality time with you as well. I'm referring to you affectionately as Brian Cleary's kryptonite from now on. So, looking forward to some times for sure. I'll get you caught up. Listen, holidays are busy for us, but we approach them with as much love and family time as we can, and we do something special every week. Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, we're very special and family oriented, and New Year's is always a challenge, but we did a phenomenal menu, which still at my advanced age and chef years, at least, most guys my age are either broken or in rehab or selling real estate. It still motivates me to get out there and do a good job. And New Year's Eve was a beautiful evening. That was good stuff. Yeah, it is true. We got Corona, the COVID-19 last week, and all of us got it aggressively through the house. But thank God, so far we're getting our way through this, and there are some ups and some downs. But I'm approaching it with positive vibes, man. And I'm trying to make this. I haven't coined the phrase yet. It's not that it's not a strength of mine, but it's not a co-vacation. It's not a COVID vacation. It's got a Corona-cation. It's got to be something, because I haven't had this much time off with my family, and it figures it's got to be something as this is really unfortunate for a lot of people. We're blessed it hasn't been for us. It's a tough thing. So, all kidding aside, just glad to be up out of bed and sitting upright and have everybody feeling well. So, as usual, a long answer, but here I am with you.
No, absolutely. I mean, like it's, and as you heard Drico say there, when he came back from Ireland, he, dodged the virus like the Matrix. And it's true here. It seems like everywhere you turn, kind of here, somebody has it. Somebody's getting it. Half, it's a lot of people I know are getting it. But I mean,
I read they say 50% of Europe will have it by the end of the month.
Yeah, that's that. I mean, that's the talk. I think it's a lot different. Now that the airports are basically because they couldn't deal with the all this testing certs and different things from different countries and all this stuff. So that Ireland basically has opened it up and said, if you're vaccinated, you don't need to get a test the day before you come in. So yeah, I could see that definitely happening. But the one thing I could say about which is true about Ireland is that Ireland had over 95% of the population of Ireland voluntarily went for its full vaccination and are going for the booster. So that's
the other 5%. The other 5% went involuntarily.
Well, no,
we don't talk about those people.
If you want to know my opinion, if you've heard this podcast before, you want to know my opinion. Yes, but that's fine, whatever. But
no. Listen, I'll tell you. I know this is your deal. But I'm glad I got it. I'm glad I'm a boosted guy. I got it on the 9th of December, and when I got sick. I got to tell you, I'm very glad it personally on a personal level. I'm a big freedom guy. You do whatever the hell you want with your own body. But as far as I'm concerned, when I tested, the first thing that came to my mind was, I hope to God this thing helps me through it. And I hope it was one of the reasons. And I hope I hope people are motivated for no other reason other than that. But I got to tell you, on the flip side of that, this vaccine thing, and I'm not getting into this. I'm not going there, but I will say this much. This thing is passed and carried and given. There is such a fear here of unvaccinated. Oh, I don't hang out with my unvaccinated friends. Unvaccinated people shouldn't be allowed access to these places. Well, guess what? I was sick for 3 or 4 days before I tested positive. I'm triple vaxxed. I could have been walking around spreading this thing as a triple vaxxed person with all access to all areas just as easy as an unvaccinated person. So I don't know, and I could be right and wrong. I'm not saying that I am right. It's just purely observational. That how this thing is passed on to others, which is really where we carry the guilt of whether we get vaccinated or not. I don't care if you don't get vaccinated and something happens to you, that's your choice. But if you give it to someone ill and they get sick because of you, that I have a problem with that. But if that's not working, where do we stand with that? Where's the Where's that
Well,
common ground? With
Is it binary
But,
like that though? Is
but,
it really
but-
binary, or is it you're less likely to pass it on to someone? You're less likely to get it and therefore pass it on if you get
I am no-
vaccinated. Whereas you're much
I am no
more
expert.
likely.
No
Like
expert.
it's
I
not
have no
like
idea.
it can't happen. It's more like your probabilities are much better. Like you're much higher probability to get it and pass it on to someone if you're not vaxxed. It's not that it can't happen the other way. It's just it's not. I don't think it's like it's either one thing or it's not. It's like there's a scale, but you're much higher in the range of being likely to do it to get it and pass it.
There's certainly a gray area with this, with the entire thing, with and pardon the with the research, with the data, with everything. There's a gray area. I mean, you talk to doctors and
there are
pediatricians,
some.
and
There may be some gray areas, but some there aren't. Like overwhelmingly, now again, this thing could turn on a dime, but but this country had 0 ICU beds, 0 in the entire country. There were 0 ICU beds, and now there are more cases, double, triple the amount of cases that we felt during the height of this thing, and there are lots of ICU beds still there, not tons. In a small country, but the hospitals are not being overwhelmed with serious cases of COVID. And I repeat my what I said in that 95% of the people voluntarily got themselves vaccinated. So I repeat that there is data, my opinion, seeing the data that I'm reading, that there is though quantifiable data that these vaccines are worth it. Quantifiable.
I could see
So
that.
I don't know where the gray areas are long-term effects. That's where the gray areas are.
Well, I mean, listen, if you get vaccinated, you're less likely to be hospitalized. You're less likely to to die.
That's the whole point of the vaccine. That's the whole point of this vaccine was not supposed to kill this. This vaccine was supposed to do, guess what? Exactly what it's doing, to weaken it and weaken it and weaken it and weaken it and weaken it to the stage that it doesn't matter anymore. That's what this vaccine was not meant to kill this. Then nobody even claimed that it was killing it. Nobody did.
No, absolutely not. Never did I read anything like that. Absolutely.
So the data is quantifiable, in my opinion. Again, like you said, I in 95% of my life, that's why I would agree with you that whatever somebody wants to do, let them do it. Like whatever you want to do, just do it. If you don't want to get this, but I find, and again, it's only about 5% here, so I have nothing to moan about where I live, but I find it odd that such a high percentage of people would not agree, have some sort of issue with the science being wrong and invalid. When we're seeing that the science is we're actually having more quantitative data now with what's going on with these vaccines and more eyes on these vaccines than any other vaccines in the world. Yet people are saying this was too quick, this was too hard. So that's like, take the vax. I hope you felt better. I'm glad. I love you, man, and I cannot wait to see you in a few weeks. Can we change the subject? Because I have a question for you, Rozzy.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Absolutely. I was wondering. I was saying we're probably right back on the subject. The same thing again as everybody's talking.
My
about,
question to you is: you serve, and we talk about like food, and you it's on the show, man. You come on and you're a chef, and you give us some great ideas, and I know that listeners listen to what you say and put it to good use to let you know I get those notes. So how important is what is written on the menu to the meal? Does that make sense? On how a menu is written?
In truth and menu, or in descriptiveness and marketing, in which ways?
I guess that's my question. Is I want to say, like I said, like how important is it, do you feel, to the overall dining experience? So I'm just gonna.
That's a broad.
Does that make sense?
That's a broad.
It's very broad.
It's broad, but it's broad, but it's clear. And I'll kind of try to break it down into a couple different things. First and foremost, we have something called truth in menu. Some states, like the state of California, and I don't know as of right now what their law states, but they have truth in menu laws. So if you say you're using something organic, you need to be. If you're lying, you can be held liable for that. Not every state's like that. Other states, you can say whatever you want. for the most part and get away with it unless you're called and somebody calls you on it, calls you out. That's one thing. The truth in menu is very important. Local and all these terms people use. Local, fresh, natural. A lot of these terms have no meaning whatsoever and there's no FDA guideline whatsoever. Like all natural beef, it means nothing, and it holds no weight anywhere. There's no definition of all natural by the Food and Drug Administration. Those things are very important, just for your own credibility as a restaurant, as a corporation, as a whomever, purveyor of food for sale and such. We are always very careful of that, so we do our research, knowing where your food comes from. Essentially, is that next marketing. In years past, there are many. I've worked in so many different genres of restaurants and done menus and written so many menus myself. You come to learn different tricks and different things. Some people are a different way, different. Years ago, it was very lengthy and very wordy. Originally, when I first got into chefing, the fine dining restaurants were in French, and that was the way to go. When you went to, La Rue de l'Espoir on Hope Street in Providence, Rhode Island, they would have, pâté de canard, compat de campagne. And it would be and it was eloquently written in French. And first of all, it intrigued the diner. It created questions tableside so the waiter could engage the customer and explain to them what it was, which is always a good thing. When a server engages a customer or vice versa and gives an explanation, it's salesmanship. And I could sell ice to an Eskimo tableside in a chef uniform to a couple that may never have had foie gras before. Number one, because I'm the chef in the restaurant, and two, I know what I'm talking about and I'm enthusiastic. But anytime you engage a diner, so sometimes menus are written in a way to create questions and engage the diner, or engage the server in salesmanship. Then later on, as things sort of progressed, we got to this sort of California cuisine ideas, the Jeremiah Tower, the Alice Waters, where it was a lot of this locally raised foods where you gave credit to like John's tomatoes and Connor's roadside eggplant. And there was a lot of that because they wanted you to feel like food was gathered from right in the backyard, from people right down the road. They wanted to put you right in the microclimate that you were eating in, make it feel very local. That was a very big thing for a long time. The word local and farm to table and artisanal were words that came in the 90s and the early 2000s. And now it's very passé. You're beating a dead horse. Restaurants that I want to be in and be a part of, in the menus that I want to write, I want to have built and developed enough of a reputation that people understand that those things are being done at great cost, at great lengths to whether it be monetarily or time-wise or research and sourcing-wise to go do these things. No, to tell the story, I still stop by 4 or 5 places in season to pick up local cheese and tomatoes and maybe some honey. And on the way, somebody might call me and say, just pick some fresh kohlrabi. You want it? And I pop over and I get kohlrabi, and then I go to work with these bags and of just brown bags of food. They don't come from the factory. And those are the things that people that's the stuff you want to convey to the diner on the menu. And there are certain ways that you can do that. One, developing that reputation. Two, those colorful descriptions of menu. But now it's even evolved somewhere farther where now I feel like being a chef and doing what I do, and I prefer, when I look at things, I don't even want to, before technique was a thing you wanted to see, maybe like, eggplant ratatouille or whatever, a French term, or, whatever it may be, venison bolognese. There were terms tacked onto words that sort of insinuated a process or a technique that was, the bolognese. Okay, we know bologna. It's a meat ragu. There's tomato product. There are certain things that it has to have. These are things that lead us on as we read a menu and we understand what that means. Maybe mushroom vol au vin. Vol au vin means it's cooked in a little pastry, so it sort of explains itself. Today, that's sort of vanished from menus today, and it's very cut and dry. Like you might see seared local black sea bass, maitake, eggplant, leeks, and that's it. And when you get it, the leeks might be pureed and the maitake mushrooms might be roasted, and they leave the technique out. So there's a little bit of mystery in the dish, and the chef gets to show his work and there's a little bit of a reveal on every dish, which I think is very exciting today because I think it's very long-winded. And I think a lot of that stuff now gets in the way. And I really, when you go to really good restaurants and go look at it like a really great, some of the great menus of the world, maybe outside of France because their traditions remain, but really in American restaurants, you'll see that it's shortened up very much. It's very cut and dry and very shortened up, a list of ingredients instead of so much mentioning the techniques or colorful descriptions and crispy and sticky, and all these words are just, they get in the way now. So that's the way of the menu and where the menu has gone and the evolution of menu writing.
Drico, do you when you read a menu, do you think you get swayed? Could you possibly get swayed between 2 or 3 options by how it's written in the menu? Does that make sense?
Right. First of all, I think it's very funny that it's almost the way that it's the words have been pared down to like the least amount of words they can use. That seems very kind of like Americanized, and like how efficiently can we put this all together? And I think that it's a hard, that's a difficult question because like a lot of the time when they're trying to push you, they're trying to persuade you. When they're doing it well, you don't know they're doing it. I think that probably I'm probably a little bit unique in that like I'm like such a picky eater that like I could see something in it I don't really like that and just get the other thing because it's, but like I rationally I know that a lot of the people are so good at cooking these different things that even though I think I don't like it, I could love it. But that I still, even knowing that, more often than not, I pick the things that I like that don't have food ingredients like let's say tomatoes or something like that I might be a bit picky over.
I got you. No, it makes perfect sense. So, Roz, when you have guys come in, I'm sure you get a million phone calls from different purveyors that want to come in and sell you stuff. You know what I mean? Like the adjectives to explain how different their product is from the next guy. In a lot of these guys, you know, is their selling point. You know what I mean? The cattle for this milk was raised by hand in a soft fuzzy cloud for the first 6 months, thus allowing the milk to ripen at a better, you know, like I'm sure that they all try to.
Let me tell you.
I'm
telling you, these strawberries have been marinating in unicorn tears for 6 months. All those kind of stuff. Absolutely, and it's a great point, Drico, too. When you say like, here's a great, it sort of bookends the statement. When you're eating in restaurants and you're in a place at a certain level and a certain reputation, it is a given that what you're going to be given on the plate will match those expectations of the dining experience that you went for. So sure, efficiency, there may be some things, but there's actually also a little touch of ego in it. Like, you are here in a place where we're going to tell you what's in these dishes, but you're going to sit back and how they arrive, you're going to eat them. So like mushroom puree,
trust us.
In a way, you know, it's sort of in that environment. In that environment, it's very much okay. But at the same time, you're absolutely right. Both of you are absolutely right. You could sell anything if you put the word crispy in front of it. Mark my words. Mark my words. I bet I could get a waiter to sell you a crispy tomato, pal. You know what I'm saying? Seriously, you know, it's one of those words. You know, it's sticky. That's why I use
the
those
connotations.
2 words. Those are the words. Those are the words. But as far as purveyors are concerned, I get a lot of that stuff. I don't want to on a lot of subjects, and this is just, you know, since I have your ear, and it's you know, sometimes we all come off as a little brash or a little, you know, chefs are ego driven. If we weren't, we wouldn't be who we are.
You wouldn't be where you're at, of course. It's like an athlete.
But you understand that, you know, we put ourselves and our work out. It's a lot like art, and it's there isn't a lot of things that people do in life where they put themselves out for critique. Artwork is only seen by art lovers. The general public needs,
100%.
People tell you that, trust me. I got a guy, a great guy. I won't use his name. He sends me a bottle of wine every year. Every year, beautiful bottle of red bourbon. You know what he told me last week? It tasted like you smoked a cigarette before you cooked my dinner. Yeah. But he sends me a bottle of wine every year. And that's not the only thing. He'll call me up, those French fries weren't crispy on my to-go order. So you have to understand there's a yin and a yang to all this crazy shit that goes on. So when I deal with purveyors, the point, backing up to the point of the ego, and the comment isn't ego-driven, but it's just the truth. I had an oyster guy come in the other day, a young guy, brought me oysters. They were beautiful. He left knowing more about oysters than he did before he came in the door. The first thing he did was he came in and he took an oyster out on the table. And he went to open it and the end broke off of it. And he went to throw it in the garbage. I said, no. Give me that oyster. And I took my oyster knife, which is a French oyster knife, and crack, schling. And he just looked at me. And the oyster man just stared at me because I opened the oyster he was going to throw in the garbage. We don't waste food. If I'm paying 65 or 75 cents an oyster, if you break the mantle off of the front of an oyster, we figured out how to not throw that oyster in the garbage. So he learned something that day. Then we talked about the quality of the animal, the depth of the shells, the method in which he raises the oysters, how much he tumbles them, all the things that I'm still, like I said, at my age, still incredibly enthusiastic about. And we have great conversations. So I learned some things from him. He learned some things from me. It's a two-way street. I've heard all the bullshit. Some of these guys, they'll come in and they'll say, this is the best. This is this one. This is the best. So, listen, most expensive is not always the best. When you go in, like I said, there are many kinds of beef out there, and I know the greatest beef in the world, and we won't have to use the names or mention the names. We know what the revered products of the world are. Excuse me. I would give me a piece of locally raised grass-fed beef. I tell you, for example, when I was in Ireland the first time, I was at a friend of John's may I say an in-law, and we had out came some porterhouse steaks, and I can still see the thing. It was so beautiful. It was massive and bright red and beautiful Irish beef, and I think it may be the quality, the naturalness, all the purity, all those things, because it's so commonplace. At least at the time, it was so commonplace. The quality of food there. It was kind of overlooked by the host, but I was like, I could still see it glowing. And the best part was they were, you want to cook it? And I just put it in the pan, bang, bang, and pulled it out of the pan. And I got some looks, but great piece of meat. So you can give me A5, you can give me all that fun stuff. That stuff's all cool. But the stuff from right around the corner is still always my favorite. It doesn't always have to be the most expensive stuff. Simple foods. Always do the trick. So when I see purveyors, a lot of times, I got a guy comes in. I'm just going to use the Hogan's Valley because I can't use the name. God knows what'll come back to haunt me. But he says this cheese comes from the Hogan's Valley. This is Hogan's Valley cheese. Here's some Hogan's Valley strawberries. And I look at him. I said, "Well, where's the Hogan's Valley?" And he said, "Well, there actually isn't a Hogan's Valley. It's just a marketing term we use." And I said, "Okay, well, you can leave me a brochure. I think we're done." So,
where's the Hogan's Valley?
Well, it makes sense, doesn't it? You know what I mean? Doesn't it? Right? It's
right.
a good question. It's a proper question.
Right.
So. Actually got me thinking about this. It was I took a very long tangent to get to putting things on menus. The thing that got me there, the story I read was that there's this farmer in Turkey who, during the winter, he puts virtual reality goggles on his dairy cattle because they get depressed during the winter. So he puts these virtual reality goggles on his dairy cattle, and he claims that they produce more milk. And the VR is of an outdoor pasture. So the cow is inside the barn and sticking his head through the rails to eat the food, but it's actually has virtual reality headsets on that is showing it that it's outside. It's outside in the pasture. It's a beautiful sunny day. Can we market that? How do we market that? That's amazing.
Well, it's simple. I think you just walk into a place, you tell that story, and then you look the person in the eye and go, "How can that not be good?
How can that not be good?"
There's no answer.
Do you know
yeah.
Do you know how crispy that beef is gonna be.
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? This is what I mean, I believed it. You just sold me that. I'm Googling Turkish virtually reality raised Turkish beef right now.
I'll send you the link. I'll send you the link over for sure.
It's certainly not going to make it any worse, you know?
Yeah, it's certainly not going to make it any worse.
All this
Actual
discussion.
picture, it's funny. Sorry, I'll let you go in 1 second, Drico, but the actual picture, I could put it on there, but is the farmer. It's actually 2 virtual reality goggles that are crisscrossed behind the cow's head, and there's one on each eye because it's so far apart.
Right.
So there's actually 2 of them that are strapped to the cow's
Now
head.
that's where the money is right there, my friend. The light bulb goes on. Let's develop a virtual reality cow head size virtual reality goggles. That's what you need to do.
Meta. I mean, we're buying fake land next, baby, NFTs, and now we got cattle. We got cattle in the virtual area, man. It's amazing.
Right.
We're bringing our animals with us.
Yeah, you gotta buy an acre of land in the metaverse so you can keep all your cows.
Yeah, go ahead, Drico. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there before.
So yeah, all this discussion has actually made me curious. About when you're talking about all these food providers, I imagine that for some, like, just to use the example again, for something like tomatoes, I'm sure there are literally hundreds of people who want to sell you tomatoes, and I would guess, just from my own experience on different things, that like almost all of them are like complete, like just exactly the same. Do you care about kind of areas of I guess differentiation? What makes different tomato farms different, or are there things where you're like, you know what, it's a potato, it's a tomato, like what does it matter?
Absolutely. It's a great question. No, it's a super question. I think well, here's basically how I look at things, and so just taking it away. I'll answer. One part of the answer would be, so commercially, if I'm a major corporation, major corporate restaurant chain, I'm looking at this in a different way. Who can deliver me the same tomato every day, year round, at the best price all the time? I'm in contract with them. I sign contracts. I get this tomato, this size, this weight, this time of the day, all year for that price. Contract. That's no fun, but it happens a lot. It happens more and more every day. I get to do the fun part of things. You're right. The next part of the answer would be, the guy with the really good tomatoes, I'm always chasing because everybody wants them. He can probably sell those on his farm stand for twice as much retail than I can buy them from him for wholesale. So he's likely to sell out of all the really good ones that I want before they can even trickle down to me. But most of the time, when you are a good customer and you develop great relationships with the people that you want to purchase from, they make portions of things available to you. So yes, there are all kinds of varieties of tomatoes depending on what you're looking for. A tomato isn't always a tomato. In general, yes, you're right. But if I'm looking for a Roma or a purple Cherokee, or I'm looking for green zebras or heirloom cherry tomatoes, when you get this in depth to, I'm not just putting a red tomato on a burger at this point. With what I'm playing with what I'm doing for in the application, there are certain different varieties of tomatoes for every application. So then the last part of the answer would be, what I do is I tend to develop relationships with several people. I like to spread it around. If I'm buying tomatoes in season locally, I may buy them from 4 different people. I try to spread that around. Some guys I pick up. One guy will call me. I have one guy. He's very small. Beautiful food. Just beautiful food. He doesn't deliver. He's just a really nice guy. If he has all the cool things, though, the duck eggs and all kinds of cool shit, just you go there, it's like farm to table paradise, it's insane.
Right.
So he'll call me and say, I have great tomatoes. You want some? Like, yup, I'll be there at 1:00. I get there at 1:00. The tomatoes are in like an old, whatever cardboard box. And I bring these sick tomatoes to work that are ready to be served that night. Other guys are on a larger scale. They're still, local and artisan farmers. He may deliver tomatoes. Those will be more on bulk stuff. Like if I'm making a chilled tomato soup and I need 40 pounds of tomatoes a week, I know I can rely on him. It's still a local product. I'm still sourcing from a local purveyor. I'm still doing the things that I should be doing as a chef. and at the same time, I'm meeting what my criteria are, which is a lot of tomatoes guaranteed once a week. So it's a sprinkling of everything on my level. But back up to the corporate level, it's contracted stuff. You're right. I mean, you get like Joe's Tomato Farm in California, and he's shipping every last tomato he grows to you in contract, done deal.
Yeah, that's I guess that's why we need everybody, right? That's what makes the guys that you go to so important, is that so much of the process is going to the other guys more and more every day. You know, that having those guys still making money enough to survive and move on to the next season is a blessing for anyone to be able to hold on to, you know, the good things in life. You know what I mean? The way things used to be and the way things should be now. You know, that
you can't let big business dictate what you serve. You can't let them dictate what you serve in small restaurants. You know, because they'll always cut out the little guy for price every time.
Right.
They don't give a shit about quality. I don't care what anybody says.
Right. So moving now. Thank you for that. That was awesome. That was I'm glad we got into that. That was a really interesting. I think we learned a lot, Drico. I think you and I learned a lot.
Definitely.
From that, actually, that was very cool. So let's move on to you now, Drico, because the Rozz, I don't know if you know this. You do. I think you did recently hear this, but I don't. First of all, I don't know if you know this, Rozz, but our boy Drico here is actually. This isn't the only podcast. This isn't the only national or international podcast that our boy Drico does. Our boy Drico is frequently a guest on fantasy football podcasts, and he actually writes a blog for a fantasy football website that's behind the paywall. So you got to pay for his knowledge. You got to pay for this kid's knowledge.
Very cool.
So much so that he just took home a huge win in fantasy football. Just last week, he brought it home.
You better not say how much for IRS purposes.
No, we can't talk about how much. Let's just say it was a good amount, and it was big. It was big.
We went from wondering where we were going to get a house deposit to like, oh, we have a house deposit now.
There you go.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. God bless you.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Drico. Congratulations. Yeah. How did you do it?
You know what they call that? That's called the American dream, my friend, right there. By the way,
that's the American dream. To do it. Fantasy football. You know what I mean? What did you do? I mean, how many teams were in this?
So in the tournament that I won, there was about 4,500 teams, so it was like a tournament. So it's not really a league. Like there's lots of leagues within the tournaments. Right. You have to finish in the top 2 within your league, and then you go to a playoffs. That's a new league of 12 teams, and the top 3 advance. And you have to be in the top 2 of your league, and then advance through 3 different playoffs, and then you're in a final 12.
Right.
And it's funny when you're in your league, you never know. Honestly, you never know. Like, oh hey, this could be a team that could win this much money. But you hope, right? You hope. Like you play in these, and part of it is you think you have an advantage, but part of it also is like there's the dream of, hey, what if? And so we actually we made it out of our league, but it wasn't like this was like some like team that was smashing it. We finished number 2 in that league. But then in the playoffs, and so it's PPR, so point per reception. In the 4 weeks of the playoff and the final round, we actually scored about 795 points, so like almost 200 points a week, which is crazy, absolutely crazy amount of points. And so I co-drafted this with somebody who I've never met. Like, really? I don't really know him, but we won a shit ton of money together.
So you didn't even know the guy.
I've never met him before. I don't know him.
Did you meet him through like a
Excuse me.
fantasy football like Tinder app or something? Like how did you meet him?
Tinder, yeah.
Well,
I
fantasy
swiped
football.
right on him.
Yeah, you two both looked at each other. You looked at each other's stats. You saw some data. This kid collects data like a champion. I'm going to swipe right on him. You know, how did it happen? How did you find him?
So, I'm in about primarily two fantasy football discords.
Okay.
And so you go in, you talk about strategy, you show teams that you drafted, talk about what you could have done differently, what you did well, and it's also just that types of conversation. And so I see this tournament FFPC, and it's 120. To enter a team is $125, and anybody who knows me knows that I see $125 and I'm like, oh, I don't like that. And honestly, I wouldn't have minded doing that, but I wanted a couple of teams because like it's a big tournament, so I didn't want to have just a one bullet or just two bullets. So I figured that it'd be better if I found people to share it with, and I just put it out there. Hey, I like to look at this tournament, but I prefer to share more teams with a few people rather than just draft a smaller amount on my own. And he said, "Yeah, I'm interested." And at that stage, I'm like, "Okay, so what if we won? Like it's a bit weird that I don't know this guy, and like who would have to trust?" And so I kind of engineered it so that I was the one who put the money in, and so that he would have to trust me to send him the money, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's funny, we went from like basically complete strangers to like now, like he actually, like, even after the tournament's over, he messages me almost every day.
That's awesome.
Where does he live?
Joey's an Eddie.
Well.
He owns an iPhone repair store in Hilton Head.
Joey
cool.
owns an iPhone repair store.
Joey I in Hilton
We
Head.
are going to go visit Joey Zindetti.
Yeah, we gotta go knock on his door.
We can almost go knock on his door in a few
almost.
I'm just letting you know. You can meet him halfway. Joey Zindetti, if you're listening to this podcast, meet me halfway.
I'm already googling the most expensive wine lists down there. So.
Oh man, that's well. Look,
listen. I have a question. I'm sorry. I have a
go,
question
Joe.
about the fantasy leagues and all this stuff. First of all, just getting back to, you had mentioned you want a best ball tournament. Is this what we're referring to?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
That is this.
Gotcha. Cool. So my question would be off the topic of that, because best ball has another meaning to me, but it makes no difference. It's other sports, but so strategy. So we talked a little bit. This very interesting. Congratulations on this big win. That's unbelievable. I can't even fathom, the analytics that must go into that, and the competition, the level of competition must be insane. So a little background on myself. I no longer am involved in fantasy sports, but for a very long time I was obsessed with fantasy baseball. I'm talking about going back to when you got the news in the newspaper before the internet with fantasy baseball. When you looked at every day, you pulled the New York Times or it was a Post maybe in the box scores, and you saw what your guys did out of the box scores in the paper. So it was a much different thing. It's come a lot farther. But anyways, being a part of it, being a part of a few really intense, and John remembers some of these guys, these keeper leagues that we were in. We had minor league drafts. We had minor league keepers.
We used to have a minor league draft.
Yeah, we had four minor league keepers every year. It was an insane league, and it was an in-person draft. Everybody showed up to the snake draft. It was massive. Draft picks were traded. It was as realistic and as intense and as cool. A bunch of really good guys who really enjoyed each other's company, but at the same time, it was like blood sport, And, I was a part of this league for a long time, learned a lot. And then I got out of that league, and I was in a couple of leagues. I was lucky enough to win these leagues. And the question is this. I took some of my knowledge in these other leagues, loopholes, strategies, using loopholes in the way that scoring was recorded and such. So here's a great example of this, and I'll just use myself first. I won a league a couple years ago against a bunch of Boston Red Sox fans. The league was based out of Boston. I was the only Yankee fan. It was fucking great, by the way. Pinstripe Dynasty was the name of the team. Ran the table on these guys. But the thing that I did was when I made it to the playoffs, I wasn't a very high-ranked team, but I made it to the playoffs. And one of the things that I did was I didn't have great starting pitching, but I had tremendous setup guys, vultures, guys who were coming in tie games and stealing a lot of wins. I don't know if you know what a vulture is. You're a fantasy sports guy. Maybe you do. Maybe you don't. But a vulture in baseball is a guy that comes in. He's usually good enough to be a starter, has a little bit more length than a short reliever. He can face righties and lefties, and he's got the ability to throw a couple different pitches. So you bring him in maybe 6th or 7th inning in a game that's important in a 3-3 tie, and he's the guy that holds the game down until you gain the lead, and then he therefore will claim the win. It's a big and a very sneaky category. So you could start these guys. These middle relievers were able to be used as starters. So I ran a lot of vultures out there instead of my weaker starters against guys that had sick starts. So most guys are trying to get in the rotation, 2 starts a week out of each guy. So they get 10, maybe you got 5 starters, 2 starts a week. You want to get 10 starts. So you're racking up Ks, you're racking up innings pitched, you're racking up a lot of categories. What I did was I cut down my starts to a minimum, ran vultures, won whip, won ERA, stole some wins, lost 2 categories to win 3. Another thing that I did was I drafted speed. A lot of these meatheads draft power. I draft speed. That's what I do. Runs scored and speed. So I win categories like stolen bases when other guys don't. So do you ever defer to the lesser categories, or what are strategies to use? Do you see? I don't know if you see exactly my explanation. I hope I was clear enough with that. But what?
No, I understand exactly what you're saying.
How do you stay within the right? How do you stay within the rules and play? You got to play the loopholes when you can. Sure, it was a little underhanded. These guys are like, well, why don't you run some more starters out there? I'm like, because these are the rules, and you're a Red Sox fan.
So
flat out.
Before you answer that question, Drico, the funniest part about this is one thing right now is that Drico is actually saying to himself, I don't really have a clue, because he's not a baseball guy, right? Drico wouldn't be a baseball guy, just to let you understand that. We've had this conversation, Drico and I, so I don't think he'll mind me, but he's saying right now, I don't really know what any of that terminology that you're talking about is, but he's saying, but.
I'm sorry. I thought it was a good question for a fantasy guy.
No, because he's saying, but I have a half a chubby right now just thinking about putting all those dots of data together to picking out a baseball team. And I can do this in a sport that I don't know fucking anything about. If I can win that, you just conquered football. Now he's like, can I conquer
You want to partner with the Rozz a little fantasy baseball. We learn a lot together, man. Don't worry.
That'd be fun. So I do know a little bit about baseball.
So you don't have to apply it to baseball. Apply it to football. How you stay within those rules, bend them with staying within them. What kind of
what kind of strategies are there?
Yeah, go for it.
What are the exploits? I guess one of the things. So just first off, I'll say that the way this fantasy football works today is that it's like it's not hey, you win the majority of the categories. It's more that you get a certain amount of points for each statistic that they rack up, and that it's who gets the most points. So, for example, you get 10 yards, you get a point. You catch a football, you get a point, and stuff like that. So it works a little bit differently, but one example is that particularly in this tournament, that you were able to start 2 running backs and 2 flex spots. And so that could be wide receiver, running back, tight end. And one thing that I did differently to what most of the other teams were doing is I tried to draft as many wide receivers as I could. And I tried to minimize how much, I guess, draft capital I spent on running backs. Because one of the things about running backs is that they're at the start of the year, they're kind of like the easiest to project, because in terms of like you just have to figure out, how many times is this guy going to touch the ball? And I can give you a pretty good idea of how many points he's going to get. Because, like, let's say, for example, one guy gets like 3.8 yards per carry. Another guy gets 4.1 yards per carry. Like, that difference doesn't really matter. Just who's going to get the more carries, who's going to get more carries inside the red zone, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what people believe is very easy to figure out. So people feel very confident in giving high projections to lots and lots of different running backs. But the problem is that there can only be one running back on the field at the same time.
Right.
And so people think that, hey, trying to think of an example here. Ezekiel Elliott, right? People at the start of the season, okay, he's going to get this many carries, he's going to get this many touchdowns, and we just feel really good about projecting him high. But what happens year after year is that most of these guys don't get nearly as many carries, they don't get nearly as many targets as people expected, because it just gets divvied up in a different way. Or they get injured more, or stuff like that. And because of that, if you draft a high volume of running backs, what happens is that, okay, you're going to get hit on some of them, but you are also kind of like guaranteeing that a bunch of your roster spots are just going to be wasted, because just by the nature of the position,
Because you're only starting one.
Well, you can start up to 4, and so that's why people will draft like 6 or 8, or sometimes 6 or 8, and they'll think, okay, well, I'll get my 4 there. But if you look at the wide receiver position, it's much harder to project, because hey, you don't know exactly how many targets they're going to get, and then let's say some guy gets 6 targets. He could catch only 3 of them for 45 yards and no touchdowns, and that's nothing to you. But the same guy can get 6 targets the next game, catch 6 of them for 100 and something yards, 2 touchdowns, and he's off to the rate. He gets a high point total. So like it's much harder to see in the projection sort of thing. But when you look at all the points at the end of the season, wide receiver as a position group almost always outscores running backs like massively. And
it makes sense, and I'll tell you what. Here's a great example in baseball. You can only start 1 second baseman, but you have 3 outfielders playing in every game. Is that sort of the same thing?
It's
you
like
Yes.
you only have 1 catcher, but you got 3 outfielders. Yes?
Yes. When you're drafting, when it comes to the draft, just doing both, I can tell you that even though the way points are scored and with different points of data is different, yes, you would be talking about winning the most in baseball, Drico. You'd be talking about winning the most categories.
right.
So you would be going head to head. Again, this is just in a traditional rotisserie, fantasy baseball league. Each week you would be going head to head with another team, and you would go against them for the whole week, and then they would take your stats. So whichever team had the most home runs wins a point. Whichever team had the most RBIs wins a point. They're half a points for ties, and that's how. So it's different in that regard, but the same thing would apply, Rozz, because you're talking about hitting categories and you're talking about pitching categories. You know what I mean? Like, and you have a fielding category as well. But when you're putting in when now you have 3 outfielders to draft and to try to win categories, and not so much have to worry about there's only 2 second basemen that are going to win anything.
So the question then would be, is there greater depth at the wide receiver position in the draft than there is at the running back position?
Oh yeah, absolutely. 100%.
See, then the correlation is the same there then, because there's a million outfielders, quality outfielders. There's only 3 good second basemen in the whole league that really produce.
And a lot of times what it comes down to is the utility guy that can play any of those outfield positions, who ends up playing every week because he might not be seen as that stud starter, but he's going to get a lot of at-bats, a lot of chances to do something good, to win categories. He's going to get a lot of stuff because he may not be thought of as the stud. He just may be the point stud, And so, and Drico's actually written articles about this, about like who to draft at the bottom of your draft board and in football because of, for what reasons, what did they do in college and stuff. And so it's very, the positions are very close together. And Drico, I have a question for you. So did you draft this team or did Joey Zanetti, who has the iPhone repair store in Hilton, do it?
I mean, I'd say this is a bit of a cop out.
Did you say to him, I think we should do this next, and this is the reasons, and you threw all your data at him, and he was like, yeah, it's a good choice. Did you do what I think you did?
About 15 picks out of 18. That's about what happened.
Yeah. Did you convince him that he was making the pick and you were actually the one making it? You know what I mean? You know what I'm talking about, Drico.
Yeah, well, you talk about it together, but like he definitely felt more confident saying, "Hey, yeah, I think that you're right about this. Let's just do that."
So, that's what I mean.
There are definitely points where.
So what I'm saying is, even though he paid 50-50 into this league, I mean, does he deserve 50% of the victory, or you know what I mean? Does he deserve, 25% of the victory?
He deserves 50% of the victory for saying yes. If you asked and he said yes, he's in 50%. He just knew he hooked into a big fish. He hooked into a big fish. Who's really? I mean, you're a genius. You're a genius, but he got to have a little genius going on there too. So
listen, I put it out there. Hey, I'm looking to draft for people, and he was the only one who said yes. So he does. If you're using that logic, he deserves credit for being the guy who said yes, I will draft with you, and yes, we can do that.
Hey, listen, next time you go in on your fantasy baseball, on your fantasy football league, next time you go in the fantasy football league, if nobody says yes, you call the Rozz. I will be your partner. You can have all 18 picks. I will sit right back and enjoy that ride and give you all the credit.
I didn't get an invite either. No, I didn't. You think Goldie's pretty pissed off in our chat there. You got a few pissed off people that you went to fantasy football Tinder site to get your partner instead of coming to one of us. You know what I mean? That's might not be right.
God, that's very good. That's really good.
Well, he's only annoyed because I won, though. Like
looking for a partner, swipe right on Gridlock.
Listen, man, you did an awesome job, and we're proud of you, bro. Appreciate the it's paying off, man. You're doing work in fantasy football land, and it's doing work, man. Like it's paying off. Look at what's going on.
It sure is.
You're the RotoViz Man of the Year, for Christ's sake. Do they have a Man of the Year? Maybe a Contributor of the Year award or something? If they do, let me know because I'm paying for a month and I'm putting your name up there. I mean, actually, with the victory you should be buying all of us, some RotoViz, a few months, at least, for Christ's sakes. You know what I mean? Even if we're not going to play fantasy football.
That's funny.
Congratulations, Drico. Before we get the hell out of here, I want to talk about a couple things. One is for the NFL, Drick. Speaking of fantasy and stuff, it's there are a ton of head coaching jobs out there. Who's appealing the most? I mean, I guess the Raiders job has to be the most appealing job out there, right?
Well, they're the ones who made the playoffs, so that totally makes sense to me. And the other one that could be kind of like sneaky is the Denver Broncos, because they've got such good receivers. They've got really good running backs. They have the good O-line. Then they have a really good defense. They don't have a quarterback.
Yeah.
So if you got a good head coach in there with a good quarterback, instantly, it's like what Peyton Manning did. Instantly, probably one of the best teams in the NFL.
Essentially, are they up for sale now too?
Yeah, I think they I think that they had to win a court case or something to be allowed to sell the team. And
because did they win that court case?
Yeah, they just won it, and so now they're going to be able to sell it.
Because the Bowen family or whatever was supposed to get first right of refusal or something if they wanted to sell it or something, right? Wasn't there a court case about that?
Yeah, so I honestly I haven't looked into it too much.
But there's an interesting. How about how about your Dolphins, man? You're a big Dolphins fan. You think that's a job that again, are they just a quarterback away too?
Well, they just drafted a quarterback. I think that unfortunately the Dolphins will probably be one of the more unappealing jobs because the guy they just sacked and they just fired him is like, as a coach, just purely as a coach, he's a brilliant coach. But the players all loved him. But everybody who worked with him on his coaching staff and the GM and anybody who was not a player who worked with him absolutely hated him. Like, in 3 years, he had 4 offensive coordinators. He had 4 offensive line coaches. He went through different defensive coordinators, and that's
sounds like a recently departed politician. Go on. Sorry about that.
And I guess the reason he got fired was because he just kept pissing people off. And then there's this kind of like thing in the media where like, oh well, he just had back-to-back winning seasons, and is a good coach. If you're going to fire this guy, who the hell is going to work for the Dolphins as the head coach?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. It'll be an interesting choice to see what they can get. What are they going to get? What? I mean, the Bears. I mean, obviously that's maybe not necessarily the most appealing job, but it's the head coach of the fucking Chicago Bears.
These were great Vikings teams. These were iconic teams when we were kids.
The New York Giants,
iconic teams. Those were the jobs.
The coaches, that's a job right there. You'd think that they'd be coming out of you could get the choice of. Then obviously you have the Jacksonville Jaguars. That is just a toxic
joke.
Nobody wants that job. They're not going to get anybody at that job. But those other jobs, you would think that they got to be able to pick up some. Something good's got to come out of that. I feel bad for the Giants because living in New York even though I'm a Cowboys fan, living in New York as long as I lived in New York, you always wanted to see one of those two teams at least being competitive. The fact is you're a Jet fan or you're a Giant fan, but if you're not if you don't root for one or the other, it was always good to see that at least one of those two teams was competing for something.
The one team in New York, which is Buffalo, they're good.
Well, yeah, but that's
that was a joke.
From a New Yorker from New York. I mean, that's a Canadian team. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that might as well be. It might as well be another state. It's true though, man. I tell you, I always forget about You always forget about them. Remember all those years? I'm not a football guy. I'm not going to claim to be, but remember there were 5 Super Bowls. All those years they were the 5 Super Bowls. Still not really considered one of those teams. You know what I mean? It's pretty interesting.
It was
right.
You're right. You're right. It is a team. We take that out of it, but I'm talking about the Jets and the Giants. I mean, those two, they're at the same stadium for Christ's sake. They do they just beat that. Did they beat that court case, Drico, that they were trying to get sued? There was like $6 billion or something. They were trying to sue the Giants and Jets for, weren't they, or some huge amount of number.
I don't remember. No,
it was something like a $6 million suit that they were filing against both teams for false advertising, basically, because neither one of them is in New York.
Oh, right. Yeah, I remember that now.
There was you and I both read an article about it or something, but there's a lot of jobs open, so we got to keep our eyes open now. When these jobs keep filling, we'll sit down and talk about the NFL coaching carousel, because that's, from my point, I always like talking about the coaches. That's what I think. I could care less about the teams. I like talking about the coaches and what the coaches do to the teams.
But that Dolphin situations with Brian Flores, just as having coached so many years, like, what do you think of a situation like that where somebody is just a brilliant coach, but just a pure, just an asshole to everyone else? Like,
You know, it sounds like he's they have the coach's coach and you have a player's coach. It's just like a chef or a cook chef. And he's probably was not a good administrator or demanded too much of his coaching staff. Did he get the results? Was he fired because of a lack of results, or what was he fired for? What was he removed for? An outsider's view, why was he fired?
why
I
he
think
was
that's the
literally
point.
fired because they didn't. So he finished 9-8 this season, right? And they felt that, like, okay, like, how do we finish like 12-6 or whatever? And it's 12-6 or a 17-game season. Doesn't 12-5. How do they finish 12-5? How do they move up from there? And if this guy is just going to piss off every other coach, and he can't coach offense, his offenses weren't good. He can't coach offense, so he's going to need someone else who's really good. And if he's just going to like repel all those people, we're stuck here. Like, it's not viable.
I understand what you mean. Yeah,
Flores-
that's a coach's coach or a player's coach, and the players might have loved him, but he couldn't. He wasn't an administrator, and
Yeah,
that's it.
where
There's
was Flores?
two
Where
sides to
was
that.
Flores before Miami? Where was Flores?
Sorry.
Where was he at before he went to Miami?
Oh, he's another New England Patriots former defensive coordinator.
Yeah, see, this is those guys, because they learn under Belichick, but Belichick don't teach them
Personal skills.
Well, yeah, he doesn't. Like, it's almost like they have to leave, think that they're bigger than the system. They leave. This is what happens to all of them. They leave.
Yeah.
They suck, and then they all come back, and then they're like, "I'm sorry, I didn't." Bill, I want to learn from you. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, Belichick always gave them enough rope to hang himself. That's what.
Which is kind
I
of
think
ironic,
that's
because when you make Bill Belichick a product of the Bill Parcells school of football?
He would have been. Well, I mean, technically, he was part of that Bill Parcells tree, because he coached 1 year under Parcells. I think it was 1 or 2 years, maybe. But no, I think it's a testament to Parcells, really, and whether you love him or hate him, he was amazing, like, because of how good those teams were. His coordinators were picked off left, right, and center. Starting with what's his name? He went to Notre Dame. There, Charlie Weiss and
Weiss, yeah,
Charlie Weiss and who was the Romeo Crennel, who both left. Crennel did okay at Cleveland for a little while, but he was not a good head coach. Charlie Weiss
he stunk.
got that dream job at Notre Dame and stunk up the fucking show at Notre Dame. Like, okay, then it was Josh, what's his name, and then it became, then down the line it's Patricia, and it's these guys, and but they're so good at understanding what's going on the field as far as their jobs are concerned, because that's what Belichick does. You got to be good at your fucking job, and these guys,
he's a delegator.
Are hungry, yeah, they're young and hungry, and Belichick says that's fine. It better work. You know what I mean? I'm sure he like talks to them about it and designs it and schemes it and all that stuff. He does, like, but he's like, I'm going to give you the best players possible. You're going to put this together. I'm going to trust you because that's your job. And if not, nobody else is going to know about it, and I'm going to do your job. But that's what he does. And he grew them up, and they left. And then they're like, oh, shit, we don't know how to talk to anybody. You know what I mean? We've been designing this shit and putting these things together. And he's right. All I've been doing is talking to players. I haven't been dealing with a front office and drafts and whose players do I get and whose players do they get. I haven't been so these guys suck. And they get
that always in any business it doesn't always translate like that. There are great chefs that aren't great leaders, and I know.
I think if he gets a little wisdom, he can learn. I think more than Patricia. I think more than a lot of those guys.
He's the most promising of that batch.
I think so, Drico. I really, really do. I could be wrong about that, but I do. I think he's the most promising of that group. I mean, at some stage, you got to at least have a coordinator that's like, I'm not going to fall for the same fucking mistakes that the last 5 guys in my position did.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Do you think that
5 guys in my position all thought that they were head coaches before they were head coaches?
Do you think it's possible that like Belichick is so good at the CEO part of the head coach's job that like he provides like the best possible structure for everybody to thrive in to such a high degree that once you remove them, he's like the safety blanket in that department that they don't know how to live without.
Yeah,
I think, and it doesn't
totally.
even again. It doesn't have to be about football. It's
Right.
just management structure.
Right,
Period.
exactly.
You know, absolutely.
Exactly.
And guys, he
No.
attracts guys because he attracts the people that succeed in those positions because you want to work for them. And then once you
Right.
have your market, you're marketable. You know what I mean? So it really is management 101. I don't know it, like I said, about football again, but there's,
Right.
that's definitely clear in any management sort of structure for sure.
Yeah, we definitely need to in a few weeks revisit this and talk about who's actually getting hired and see where these teams are going with their hirings and what's going on, and see if we can figure out what they're looking for. But I'd definitely be up for us all sitting down and talking about it. And before we sign off and get out of here, because that's what we do, I have to give a huge shout out because finally, after and it's a very quiet celebration for me, but finally, after a lot of years of waiting in between, good 2008 Phillies, that was the last time that I could celebrate a championship. As you both probably know, so when I was a kid, a very young kid, during the summers, my dad would put me on an airplane and fly me down to visit my grandmother, Ruth, still alive, God bless you. She lived in Cobb County, Mableton, Cobb County, Georgia. And because I used to spend my summers down there, I became the don't get me wrong, I was 8, 9, 10 years old. So 19, I was just coming off of basically Herschel Walker. Like the last time this team was good, I became a Georgia Bulldogs fan. And Georgia finally wins themselves another national championship. So fucking shout out to the Bulldogs and Kirby Smart, man. I'm so happy for those guys. That's such a good program there. Just following the program, and from Mark Richt, from Vince Dooley, and it's just such a good program. So I just have mad props for those guys. But shout out to the Bulldogs for winning the national championship. I'm so impressed. With the quarterback named Stetson. I think the quarterback, his name is Stetson. Come on now.
Dr. Stetson, we'll see you now.
Stetson. That's the name of a hat, for Christ's sake, ain't it? For a quarterback. And just totally impressed. Did you guys watch the game at all?
Unfortunately, I did not, but it was big news, and it was very interesting to see those 20 that they put up in the fourth quarter against a team like Alabama. And anytime anytime I see Nick, I mean, I don't dislike Alabama, but I like to see the big guy get knocked off. I'm sorry, I always have. So, that's always kind of neat to.
We always root for the underdog.
Yeah,
Saban's
to upset the underdog. Exactly.
Saban has only gotten beaten at Alabama by 2 of his former assistant coaches, and that both of those losses were this year when Jumbo Fisher beat him at Texas A&M and Kirby Smart beat him at Georgia. He's like 25-2 against any one of his former coordinators or coaches that went on to become head coaches in college. That's how good Nick Saban is. You know what I mean? That's how good Nick Saban is, talking about coaches and their assistants. But I did hear that too, that Saban gave mad props out to Kirby Smart and his
baby.
and totally impressed with the way the guy coached the game. And again, look, Alabama lost both of its star wide receivers were out of the game, but because of that, I mean, Georgia did a lot of man-to-man coverage on those wide receivers. Now they lost 2 wide receivers, as we're talking about fantasy points. Put a lot of coverage on the man-to-man on those wide receivers and put some pressure on the quarterback, and that's how they just weighed them down to win that game. So I was totally impressed. Drico, did you watch the game?
I didn't watch the game.
Unbelievable how you don't watch. You'd watch the Super Bowl, wouldn't you?
I probably will watch the Super Bowl.
This is what I'm talking about, people. This is what I'm talking about. Like the college football is so much better than the pros, man.
If you're in that part of the country, If you're in that part of the
You're not
country,
gonna
there
win
is
all that
no
money.
there is no professional sports. That's their blood in that part of the country.
It's
You know what I
amazing.
mean? It's just this. That's all there is down there. So, guys, I got to cut this a little short for myself. I'm getting the dinner is ready key over here.
We're not cutting nothing short. We're out of here. We're out of here right now, Roz. Thank you
such
so
a
much
pleasure. Drico, I look
coming on the
forward.
show.
Yeah,
Drico-
look forward to meeting you.
Drico, thanks
Absolutely.
so much
Johnny,
for
thanks,
coming on the
but
show.
love you guys.
Yeah, talk to you soon, Roz. Drico, thank you again so much for coming
Thanks
on the show.
for having me on.
It was a great show. This was a
Yeah,
good
really
one.
enjoyed it.
I laughed a lot. I really enjoyed it. I hope the people out there do as well. This is Romo.
Peace.
I am here. Hit the lotto. Let's turn that music up a little bit. Hope everybody had a good time out there. I really enjoyed doing this. 30-some episodes. Let's keep going. Thanks a million.
Hit the lotto. Hit the lotto. Hit the lotto. Hit the lotto. Mega flex. Hit the lotto. Who knows what's next? Hit the lotto. Slurpee. Coke icy. Hit the lotto. Hit the lotto.